"I don't think I was enough," she said, her voice fractured, raw. I hadn't meant to hear it. I was just passing by, looking for my jacket in the back room of that reception hall turned ghost town. But the way she said it, like it had been waiting inside her for years, not hours, made me stop. She didn't look up, just sat there, fingers trembling over the lace of a dress that was never going to walk down any aisle. "You were too much mud for the wrong person," I replied. The words came out before I thought them through. Maybe because they were true. Maybe because she looked like she needed someone to say it. She didn't flinch, didn't look at me, but I saw her shoulders pull in tighter, like she was trying to fold herself into silence. I could have walked away. I wasn't part of her story. I was a distant cousin of the groom's best friend, invited out of courtesy, known by no one. But I didn't leave. "You don't have to sit here alone," I added. "Not if you don't want to." That got a glance, just a flicker. Her eyes were rimmed with red, but there was something behind them that hadn't broken yet, something holding on, barely. "I don't even know your name," she whispered. "Joshua," I said. "No expectations, no questions. I'll just sit." She nodded once, and I took the chair across from her. For a while, there was nothing but silence between us. The kind that doesn't ask for more. The kind that doesn't pressure, doesn't pretend. "I waited for him for 37 minutes, she said eventually. "He sent a text to his sister, said he couldn't do it, couldn't explain why." "I'm sorry," I said, because anything else felt too much or not enough. "He said I was perfect, right before he vanished." "Maybe he meant it," I said. "Some people run when they find something real. It scares them." She looked at me, finally, a long, steady look like she was trying to decide whether to believe me or not. Then she wiped under her eye, not to fix anything, just to feel that she still could. "I don't know what scares me more," she murmured. "That he left or that I kind of expected it." The way she said it, quiet, resigned, like this wasn't just about today, like it was about every almost she'd ever been handed. "Then maybe," I said carefully, "it's not the first time someone didn't see you properly." She didn't answer that, but she didn't look away either. We sat like that for a long time. The staff had started cleaning up hours ago, but no one came to push us out. Maybe they could see what was happening, too quiet to name. When she finally stood, she moved slowly, like she wasn't sure if the world would still catch her weight. "You really don't know me," she said. "No," I agreed. "But I'd like to if that's something you'd want." She hesitated. Then, "Rachel." She said it simply, without apology or explanation. And then she left, but not like she was escaping. More like she had somewhere to go now, even if it was just to breathe. I stayed a little longer, long enough to make sure the quiet didn't feel like abandonment. I didn't expect to see her again. Not really. People vanish after days like that, fold back into their private spaces, board flights to anywhere else, disappear beneath layers of polite responses and well-meaning friends. But 3 days later, I saw her on the same park bench where I used to sit during lunch breaks. No dress, no ceremony, just Rachel. Jeans, hair pulled back, hands wrapped around a cup of something warm like it was the only thing anchoring her. She noticed me before I said anything. Her eyes lifted, not startled, just aware. "I thought about leaving," she said. "No greeting, just that. And," she shrugged, "didn't feel like running would change anything." I nodded. I sat beside her, careful not to sit too close. "I didn't come here to see you," she added quickly. "I just needed air." "I didn't come here looking for you," I replied. "But I'm not sorry it happened." That made her smile, just barely. But it was there. There was no urgency between us, no rush to fill space or silence. I told her I took my lunch breaks here, away from the noise of the office. She said she used to come here with her dad, before he got sick. We didn't try to connect the dots. We just let them surface. She asked me what I did for work. I told her I managed logistics for a supply company. Nothing thrilling, but steady. She said she used to teach English to high schoolers, but left the classroom last year after a burnout she never admitted out loud. "I don't know who I am when I'm not trying to be useful to someone," she said, more to the wind than to me. "You don't have to be useful to be needed," I said. She was quiet for a long time after that. When I stood to leave, I didn't ask for her number. I didn't suggest meeting again. I just said, "Same time tomorrow if you feel like sitting." She didn't answer, but the next day she was there again, and the next, We didn't speak every time. Sometimes we just sat, watched dogs chase each other, watched the sky shift, watched whatever wasn't us. It became something wordless, a rhythm, a quiet agreement. On the 5th day, she brought 2 coffees. "I didn't know if you take sugar," she said. "I do," I replied. "Thanks." That was the first day she told me about her mother, how she always measured love in tasks completed, expectations met, sacrifices made. "I think I learned to love in debt," she whispered, "like I always owed more than I gave." "You don't owe me anything," I said. She looked at me like that was the strangest sentence she'd ever heard. Then she said, "I know." That's when I realized she was staying, not in the city, not in the park, but in the moment. She hadn't left it yet, and neither had I. There were days she spoke only 3 words, days when she sat beside me, eyes fixed on some distant point beyond the trees, and I knew better than to ask where her mind had gone. I didn't need to know. Not everything broken wants to be explained. Some things just want company while they breathe. Rachel wasn't trying to be impressive anymore. There was no performance in her anymore, no smiles polished for approval, no carefully curated stories. She was quiet in a way that didn't ask to be filled, and I let the silence stand. We had this unspoken understanding. If she needed to speak, I'd be there to hear it. If she didn't, I'd still be there. One morning, she asked if I'd walk with her to the bookstore she used to go to. It was tucked behind a florist and always smelled like old paper and lavender. We didn't buy anything, just wandered. She ran her fingers across spines like she was searching for a version of herself hidden in one of them. I didn't interrupt. Afterward, we sat in a small cafe with chipped mugs and soft jazz. She stirred her tea longer than necessary, then said, "I used to think love had to be loud, grand gestures, public declarations, passionate arguments followed by desperate apologies, that kind of noise. And now," I asked, "now I think maybe real love is quiet, like someone showing up without being asked, or remembering how you take your tea." I didn't answer right away. I didn't want to turn it into something larger than what it was, so I just said, "I remember. No sugar, extra lemon." She looked at me for a long time, as if weighing whether to believe I meant it. Then she nodded once, and we moved on. Sometimes she would ask me questions, not the surface kind, but ones that made me pause. What scared me when I was a kid? If I believed people could really change, whether I thought silence was more powerful than words. She never asked about my past relationships, never pried into the things I wasn't ready to say. She gave me the same space I offered her, and I gave her answers when they came. One afternoon, as we watched a little girl try and fail to fly a kite in the park, Rachel whispered, "I don't know who I am without someone else's plan." I turned to her. "Then maybe it's time to stop living inside someone else's outline. And draw what? Whatever you want, even if it's just a dot on the page." She let out a breath that wasn't quite a laugh. It wasn't quite sorrow either. It was something in between. Recognition, maybe, or relief. That day, she didn't say goodbye when she left. She just touched my arm lightly, a single press of her hand. It was the first time she'd touched me. Nothing dramatic, just the weight of presence. I sat there, long after she was gone, letting the silence speak for both of us. She didn't say yes right away. When I told her about the place I went on weekends, a small, quiet patch of land outside the city, she just listened. I didn't try to sell it. I simply said, "There's room there if you ever need air." 3 days later, she texted, just a single word, maybe. So we went. I picked her up early on a Saturday. She didn't pack much. She didn't talk much either. But she was there. That was enough. The drive was mostly silent, broken only by the hum of the tires and the occasional murmur from the old radio. I didn't press her. I didn't offer stories to fill the quiet. I just drove, careful and steady, like the pace itself might matter. When we arrived, she stepped out of the car and stood for a long time, just breathing. The house was small, almost forgotten by time. No luxury, no distractions, just trees, wind, and stillness. "It smells like nothing," she said softly. I didn't realize how much I missed that. We didn't do much that first afternoon. I showed her the kitchen, the creaky porch, the old path down to the stream. She walked slowly, taking everything in like it might vanish. That night we sat on opposite sides of the porch, sipping tea in chipped mugs. The sky stretched above us like a quiet promise. "I used to dream about disappearing," she said, voice low. "Not because I wanted to die, just stop being seen the wrong way." "Did this feel like that?" I asked. "Like disappearing?" "No. More like being left alone in a good way." We slept in separate rooms. That was never even a question. Respect wasn't something I had to perform with her. It was just part of the air between us. And that night, for the first time in years, I slept without waking. The next morning, she was already outside when I got up, barefoot in the grass, holding a book she hadn't opened. She looked over when she heard the door. "Do you always come here alone?" she asked. "Mostly," I said. "Sometimes my sister joins. Sometimes I just need to remember how to be quiet." She nodded. "I think I forgot how to do that." "You're remembering." Later, she helped me water the plants. We didn't talk much. We didn't need to. Every now and then, she'd look at me, like she was trying to figure out what part of this was real. And maybe, in her own way, she was. That evening, we made simple food. She chopped vegetables with the slow precision of someone relearning control. At one point, she paused and asked, "Are you always this calm?" "Not always," I said. "But here, yes. I don't know what to do with that." "You don't have to do anything." After dinner, we sat again on the porch. She wrapped herself in an old blanket from the couch. It didn't match the weather. It was more for the feeling than the cold. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For not asking for anything back." I didn't respond. Just sat there beside her, letting the stillness say it for me. She didn't cry that night, didn't explain anything, but I knew something in her had shifted. Not everything, not suddenly, but enough to breathe, enough to stay. She found it by accident. I'd left it in the drawer of the old cabinet by the window, the one with a loose handle and a faded sticker from a road trip I barely remembered. I heard the soft thud of it being set on the table and turned to see her holding the notebook, her fingers resting gently on the worn cover. "You wrote in this?" she asked. "Years ago," I said. "Didn't know it was still there." "Can I?" "You can." She didn't open it right away. Just sat down, the notebook resting in her lap like something fragile. When she did open it, she turned the pages slowly, reading in silence. I didn't try to explain anything. Some of it was poetry, some pieces of letters never sent, some thoughts too rough to shape into meaning. She stopped at one page near the middle, eyes scanning the words with a stillness I recognized. Then she read aloud, just one line. "I think we become invisible by trying to be seen too much." She looked up. "You wrote that?" I nodded. "It feels like something I've been trying to say for years." I didn't know anyone else would ever read it. "Maybe it needed to wait for the right person," she said, so softly I almost missed it. She set the notebook down gently, as if afraid it might fall apart. I could see the questions forming, but she didn't ask them. Instead, she said, "You write like someone who's been quiet for a long time." "I have," I admitted. She didn't ask why. That was one of the things I had come to admire about Rachel, her ability to leave space without turning it into a void. That evening, she made dinner while I chopped wood for the fireplace. The rhythm of our tasks moved in sync, unspoken but understood. We didn't plan it that way. It just happened. Later, sitting by the fire, she asked, "Who were the letters for?" Some were for people who never stayed. Others for versions of myself I didn't recognize anymore. That's heavy. It helped me carry things. She leaned back, watching the flames for a long time. Then she said, "I used to write too, in college. I stopped when I realized I was only writing to prove I mattered. And now, I don't know, maybe I'm learning I already do." I didn't touch her, didn't move closer. I just let the words settle. As the fire burned lower, she said, "I didn't think I'd ever want to stay anywhere again. But this place, it doesn't ask anything from me. It doesn't need to. You being here is enough." She looked at me then, not with gratitude, not with longing, but with something quieter, recognition. Before she went to sleep, she handed the notebook back to me. "Keep writing," she said, "even if no one reads it, even if it's just for you." I nodded, but I didn't put it away. That night, I left it on the table between us, open, waiting. It started raining without warning, one of those sudden downpours that belong to no season, no logic. Rachel and I had gone walking just before it began, following the overgrown trail behind the house. She liked how the path twisted unpredictably, as if the land itself had decided to grow wild. We didn't run when the rain came. We laughed at first, small, surprised laughter, and then we moved quickly toward the old shed near the edge of the trees. I unlocked it with the rusted key I kept in my pocket. Inside, it smelled of cedar and dust, forgotten tools and stories that never left the walls. We stood there, soaked, catching our breath in the hush that follows sudden weather. She pushed her wet hair back and said, "I haven't done something like this in years." Got caught in the rain? No. Got caught without a plan. We stayed inside, sitting on 2 overturned crates. The rain drummed steadily on the roof, soft and relentless. It made everything else quiet. "I used to think stillness meant failure," she said after a while. "Like if I wasn't chasing something, I was wasting time. And now I think I've been running from something, not toward it." I didn't ask what she was running from. That wasn't my role, not here. I just listened. She looked around the shed, at the shelves of forgotten things. "Did you build this?" "My grandfather did," I said. "He used to fix everything with his hands, even things that didn't need fixing. He sounds like someone who didn't know how to sit still either. Maybe, but he was always present, even in the quiet." She didn't respond, just nodded slowly, absorbing the silence around us. There was no cell service out here, no signal to distract us. Only the sound of rain and breath. We sat that way for a long time, not touching, not talking, just existing in the same space without effort. At one point, she said, "You don't ask for anything. That's rare." "I'm not here to take—" She looked at me, eyes soft. "Then what are you here for?" "To stay, if that's what you need." The rain softened eventually, but we didn't move, not right away. She leaned back against the wall, head tilted, eyes closed. I could see the tension leaving her. Not all of it, but enough to recognize the difference. "I've been trying to hold everything together for so long," she said quietly, "even when it was already falling apart. You don't have to hold anything here." The way she looked at me then wasn't romantic. It wasn't dramatic. It was something quieter, heavier, as if she finally believed I meant what I said. We walked back slowly when the rain stopped. She didn't ask me to take her home. She didn't ask anything. She just walked beside me like that's where she'd always belonged. And that night, when we sat on the porch again, she didn't say much, but she leaned slightly toward me, not touching, just close enough, and I stayed exactly where I was, not reaching, not pulling, just present. That was enough. She brought them out wrapped in a rubber band, edges curled from too much handling. There were 7 in total, each envelope unsealed, each one marked with a date. She placed them on the table between us like pieces of a puzzle she no longer wanted to solve. "They're letters I wrote to him," she said, "after he left. I didn't move, didn't reach for them. They weren't mine to open. I never sent them," she continued. "I didn't even write them for him, not really. I think I just needed to hear myself say things without being interrupted." She picked one up, turned it over, then set it back down. "Some are angry, some are full of excuses, some— I don't even know what I meant." "You don't have to explain them," I said. "I know. That's why I brought them here." She looked at me like she was measuring something. Weight, risk, maybe trust. "Would you sit with me while I get rid of them?" "Yes," I said. We went outside. The air was cool, still holding the softness of early evening. She placed the letters in a small metal basin, one by one. No ceremony, just the sound of paper brushing against metal. She struck the match herself, hands steady, eyes clear. As the flame caught, she said nothing. I didn't speak either. We just watched the paper curl inward, edges blackening, then blooming into quiet orange. It didn't take long. The letters gave up easily, like they'd been waiting for this. When it was done, she stayed seated, watching the smoke rise. "I thought I'd cry," she said finally. "You still might. I don't think I need to. Not for him. Not anymore." There was a long silence. Then she looked at me. "Why didn't you ask me what was in them?" "Because I don't need to know where you've been to walk beside you now." She nodded slowly. You keep doing that. Doing what? Being the opposite of what I'm used to. I don't do it on purpose. That's what makes it work. Later, we sat on the porch again. No fire, no tea, just the night. She pulled her legs up under her, wrapped in the same old blanket. At some point, she leaned her head on my shoulder. Nothing heavy, just a quiet gesture, almost uncertain. I didn't move. I didn't say a word. And there, with ash cooling in a basin beside us, I felt something shift, not dramatically, not loudly. Just a small alignment, like something long unsettled had finally found where it was meant to rest. She didn't ask where we were going. She just got in the car when I told her we had somewhere to be. It was a quiet drive, the kind we'd grown used to. No playlist, no rush, just the rhythm of the road and the comfort of knowing silence didn't mean absence. I took her to my sister's house, a simple place on a street lined with trees, the kind of neighborhood that hadn't changed much in 20 years. I told her we'd only stay for lunch, that there was no expectation beyond that. I don't have to explain anything, right? She asked. Not to anyone, I said. My sister, Lila, opened the door with her usual easy warmth. She hugged me first, then turned to Rachel with a smile that didn't ask questions. So this is the one who's been making you a little softer, Lila said. Not teasing, just observing. Rachel smiled, polite but cautious. I'm still figuring out what that means. Good, Lila said. Figuring things out is my favorite kind of guest. The table was already set. Roasted vegetables, warm bread, something with lemon in the air. We sat and it all unfolded naturally. Lila talked about her job, her garden, the neighbor's noisy dog. Rachel listened more than she spoke, but when she did speak, it was honest, not forced. At one point, Lila excused herself to check on dessert. Rachel leaned toward me slightly and whispered, I didn't expect this to feel okay. It doesn't have to feel like anything yet, I said. It can just be what it is. After lunch, we sat on the back porch while Lila tended to her plants. Rachel watched her for a while, then said, She doesn't look at me like she's waiting to hear a reason. She's not. I think I've spent years trying to justify my place at every table. You don't have to here. Later, as we said goodbye, Lila hugged Rachel lightly and said, Come back when you want to, no need to call it anything. On the drive back, Rachel was quiet again. But it wasn't the silence of retreat. It was something else. Processing, maybe. Letting something settle without rushing to name it. She spoke only once, near the edge of town. Do you think there are people who just choose you without needing a reason? I think the right ones don't look for reasons, I said. They just stay. She didn't answer, but she reached for my hand. No words, just that. Fingers interlaced, resting on the console between us like they belonged there. And for the rest of the ride, we said nothing. Because we didn't have to. It was late, and the streets were nearly empty. We walked without a direction, coats pulled close, shoes soft on the pavement. The night held a kind of quiet that asked nothing of us. Streetlights buzzed faintly, casting long shadows that moved beside us like old friends. Rachel had been quieter than usual that day, not distant, just thoughtful, the kind of quiet that comes not from holding something back, but from holding something close. I didn't press. I'd learned that the things that matter most with her come slowly, if at all. We stopped near a small bridge overlooking the river. She leaned on the railing, staring into the dark water. Were you always like this? She asked. Like what? This calm, this steady, like nothing rattles you. I considered the question for a moment. No, I used to try too hard, hold on too tight, chase what didn't want to be caught. And now I let people show me who they are. If they stay, they stay. If they go, I don't follow. She nodded, her eyes still on the river. What changed? Being left more than once, but also learning that peace doesn't come from being chosen. It comes from choosing yourself and from not confusing chaos with connection. She was quiet again, but this time it felt heavier. I think I confused a lot, she said softly. I thought if someone needed me, they'd never leave. That's not the same as being wanted. No, she said. It's not. She turned toward me then, not fully, just enough that I could see her face clearly in the low light. And with me? She asked. Are you staying because you need to or because you want to? I didn't hesitate. Because I choose to. Every day. Without condition. Something shifted in her expression. Not relief, not surprise. Something deeper. Like a part of her had been holding its breath for years and was finally willing to exhale. "I don't know what to do with that," she said. "With being chosen without having to earn it. You don't have to do anything." She stepped closer, not entirely sure of herself, but not stepping back either. We stood there, close enough to feel each other's warmth without touching. The silence between us was full, not empty, not uncertain. Full of everything we weren't saying, everything we didn't need to say. When we finally started walking again, she didn't take my hand. Instead, she walked slightly closer. Enough that our shoulders brushed now and then, enough that I knew she felt safe. And as we moved down the quiet streets, something in me settled, not because of anything dramatic, but because in her question, and in my answer, something true had been placed between us. Something unspoken but strong. She didn't ask anything else that night, and I didn't need her to. There was no grand declaration, no marked transition, just another morning, slow and quiet. Rachel stood by the window of my apartment, coffee in hand, watching the light stretch across the buildings. I moved around her in silence, making toast, boiling water, neither of us in a hurry to name what this had become. She hadn't gone back to the house she was supposed to move into after the wedding. Said it felt like someone else's story now. For weeks, she stayed between my place and the cabin, never all at once, never with a suitcase. Just enough clothes to wash and wear again, just enough presence to matter. One morning I asked her, "Do you miss it?" "Miss what?" "The life you were building." "Before." She thought for a long time, then said, "I miss believing it was the only version that made sense." I nodded. I didn't push. There are questions that open, not because they're answered, but because someone is willing to sit with them. That afternoon, she helped me fix a loose hinge on the kitchen cabinet. We didn't talk much while working. Her hands were steadier now, her movements less hesitant. When the hinge clicked into place, she looked at me and smiled. Not wide, not performative, just a small curve of knowing. Later, we sat on the floor with bowls of soup and old blankets. Rain tapped lightly on the windows. She looked at me and asked, "Do you think we're supposed to know when something begins?" "No," I said. "I think the right things start without announcement. They begin in small decisions, quiet choices, like showing up, like staying." She didn't respond for a while. Then she said, "Then I think this is something." I didn't move closer, didn't try to frame it. I just let her words stay where they landed. As the evening settled, she stood up and walked to the window again. The city moved beneath us, slow and detached. She turned back, held my gaze. "I'm not promising anything yet," she said. "I'm still figuring out how to be here." "I'm not asking for promises," I said. "Just truth. Even in pieces." She walked toward me, and for the first time she didn't hesitate. She sat beside me, close. Our shoulders touched. Her head leaned against mine. No words, just breath and quiet. We stayed that way until the room darkened. No need to turn on the light, no need to define it. Because something had started, not with vows or declarations, but with presence. With mornings that asked nothing. With hands that didn't reach to hold, but stayed open. With decisions that looked like silence but felt like home. And that was enough for now for both of us.